So I'm going to start off with a song that I wrote. It's called Innocence, and yeah, that's about it. All right, here we go.
Should have listened, should have called, should have asked, should have been there. But I was gone and you were lost in the distance. It makes no difference.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. So that was one of my original pieces, and now I'm going to play a song called Marching Bands of Manhattan by Death Cab for Cutie. I'm glad some people know it. All right.
Open my arms wide enough to the Isle of Manhattan. I'd bring it to where you are, making a lake of the East River and Hudson. If I could open my mouth wide enough for a marching band to march out, they would make your name sing and bend through alleys and bounce off all the buildings. I wish we could open our eyes to see in all directions at the same time. What a beautiful view. If you were never aware of what was around you, and it is true what you said, that I I live like a hermit in my own head, but when the sun shines again, I'll pull the curtains and blinds to let the light in. Sorrow drips into your heart through a pinhole, just like a faucet that leaks, and there is comfort in the sound. And while you debate half empty or half full, it slowly arises. Your love is gonna drown. 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 Sorrow drips into your heart through a pinhole, just like a faucet that leaks, and there is comfort in the sound. But while you debate half empty or half full, it slowly arises. Your love is gonna drown. 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 Thank you. Thank you. All right, what do I have next? I wrote down the songs I'm playing on my hand. So, okay, next is another original song. Yes, and doesn't really have a title. A lot of lyrics, so listen close. And if you were at open mic 2 weeks ago, you heard me play this. I dreamt I held your hand last night, but it was cold. Your eyes were distant and you turned to look at me, but there was nothing left to see, 'cause I've been disappearing as of late. I hope your nights are filled with girls who are completely there, who only dance and stare you down to see if you are down to let them lead you down the hall, where it is private and quiet enough to hear her ask, what's your favorite color? Blue, you'd say, like your eyes, baby, but I'm calling your bluff. Don't you lie about me. I know that it's orange, 'cause mine is too. Please don't give away all of the things I gave you. You asked me about my fears, well darling, here's my confession. I've dreamt every night of the ways that you could break my heart. Said I didn't care much, but I feel it's starting, like a chorus that's oversung. I'm addicted to you, I refuse to give up. What are you afraid of, you ask? This feeling I have says don't look back. You know that you'll regret if you let go. Don't let him leave, he'll tear the heart on your sleeve to shreds, but you'll enjoy the feeling of his fingers around your neck. Can't breathe, but you've never felt so wide alive with fear of losing yourself to a trophy collector who will put you on his shelf. You asked me about my fears, well darling, here's my confession. I've dreamt every night of the ways that you could break my heart. Said I didn't care much, but I feel it's starting, like a chorus that's oversung. I'm addicted to you, I refuse to give up. What are you afraid of, you ask? This feeling I have. Well, what do I have left to say? I'm afraid of feeling this way. But even if I knew it'd end horribly, there's nowhere that I'd rather be. So you asked me about my fears, well darling, here's my confession. I've dreamt every night of the ways that you would break my heart. Said I didn't care much, much, but I feel it's starting like a chorus that's oversung. I'm addicted to you, I refuse to give up. What are you afraid of, you ask? This feeling, this feeling, this feeling I have.
Thank you guys. I'm gonna grab some water. Just occurred to me that like because there's so many words in that song, there's like no room to breathe. So sorry about that. So that was an original, and now I'm gonna play a song called "Rise Up" by Diane Birch. I heard this song for the first time in like 7th grade. I'm pretty sure I got it. It was like one of those free songs on iTunes. So that's like the only reason I know it, but it's pretty good. So this is "Rise Up."
Why not say it like it is, like you know you should, before they break your little heart, break it good. Feelings on the inside never let you down, so why not say it like it is, even if it don't make your mama proud. Why change your mind when you make it up? Second chances don't come easy, easy for some. Baby, I don't know the lock from the key, but I know one of them is you, and the other one's me. So if it's happiness you want, that's what you'll get. You gotta rise up, little sister, turn on the light. You gotta wise up to the stories you've been told, 'cause love don't come in black or white, yeah. Oh no, no, no. Well, my mama told me I won't make it through the pearly gates, 'cause I ain't sorry for my sins and all my mistakes. Well, mama, I don't know if I'm going up or down, but I know heaven's gonna be one lonely town. So if it's happiness you want, that's what you'll get. You gotta rise up, little sister, turn on the lights. You gotta wise up to the stories you've been told, 'cause love don't come in black or white, yeah. Oh no, no, no.
Thank you so much. Okay, so that was the second to last song. This is the last one. This is called The Ballad of Love and Hate, and it's by the Avett Brothers. This song's kind of cool. I feel like I should introduce it because, like, I don't know, it needs introduction. So it's kind of like a story personifying love and hate, and it's like about their relationship, and like love goes on a journey and comes back, and it's just like, you gotta listen to the lyrics because the lyrics are so good. Not my lyrics, the Agape Brothers, but here it is.
Love writes a letter and sends it to hate. My vacation's ending, I am coming home late. The weather was fine and the ocean was great, and I can't wait to see you again. Hate reads the letter and throws it away. No one here cares if you go or you stay. barely even noticed that you were away. I'll see you or I won't, whatever. Love sings a song as she sails through the skies. The water looks bluer through her pretty eyes, and everyone knows it whenever she flies, and also when she comes down. Hate keeps his head up and walks through the streets. Every stranger and drifter he greets, and shakes hands with every loner he meets, with a serious look on his face. Love arrives safely, suitcase in tow, carrying with her the good things we know. A reason to live and a reason to grow, to trust, to hope, to care. Hate sits alone on the hood of his car, without much regard to the moon or the stars, lazily killing the last of a jar of the strongest stuff you can drink. Love takes a taxi, a young man drives. As soon as he sees her, hope fills his eyes, but tears follow after at the end of the ride, 'cause he might never see her again. Hate gets home lucky to still be alive. He screams o'er the sidewalk and into the drive. The clock in the kitchen says 2:55, and the clock in the kitchen is slow. Love has been waiting, patient and kind, just wanting a phone call or some kind of sign that the one that she cares for, who's out of his mind, will make it back safe to her arms. Hate stumbles forward and leans in the door, weary head hung down, eyes to the floor. He says, love, I'm sorry, and she says, what for? I'm yours and that's it, whatever. I should not have been gone for so long. I'm yours and that's it, forever. You're mine and that's it, forever.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all of the support. It was so nice of you guys to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Diego. It was awesome. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of this evening. Thank you, guys.
Woo! Okay, so the first question, and we're just going to do basically the first hand that I see, so sorry if it's a bit biased, but the first question is, what is the name of the Agape Latte bean, the mascot? Agappuccino, correct. Okay, the second question is more so tied to our speaker, Noreen. So if you know her well, this one's for you. The question is, in what department did Noreen work in before she worked in service learning? Yes. Campus ministry, correct. Woo! Okay, last trivia question. Okay, so this question is tied to Noreen again, indifferently, through, indirectly, I mean, through the service learning department. And the question is, the dorm behind me, Alumni Hall, is a dorm now for the service learning community, for those that may not know, specifically for sophomores. And the question is, what was that dorm used for before it was a dorm? Maddie Blue. Yes, correct. Okay, guys, thank you for playing trivia. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian to introduce Noreen real quick. But before Noreen comes up, again, if you guys want to quickly grab some last snacks, some last coffee, because once she gets up here, we'll definitely want you guys all to be stay tuned to the front. But thank you guys for playing.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming to the first Agape Latte of this academic year. So as we have already pretty much established, Noreen Cameron is going to be talking to us in a little bit about the questions that guide her life, as well as her understanding of God and her faith. So a little bit about Noreen. She graduated from Barry University in Florida with a Bachelor's of Science in nursing. And she also studied theology at the Catholic Theological Union in Chicago, and she also studied education and counseling right here at Villanova. Noreen was a 5-year resident of Sheehan Hall, room 311, if you live there now. She also worked in campus ministry for the first 18 years of her career here, and now she's been the director of service learning for the last 9. Noreen is one of 10 children, and she took Irish dance lessons for 7 years. She also had a 110-pound poodle not too long ago. And she warns us all to choose our friends wisely. And she wants to warn all of us undergraduates that the decisions that we make now will have a great influence on us for the rest of our lives. So now, our very honored guest, Ms. Noreen Cameron.
I was going to give him a hug, but he walked away. No. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming tonight. And I know I'm going to miss one name, but thank you, Leo, Brian, Anita, Joe. Who else did I meet with? Diego. But there was a Stephanie. Wasn't there a Stephanie? Sophia, sorry. So thank you very much for bringing me here tonight. The talk is called Surviving the Questions because none of us have a life that goes smoothly as we anticipated, or maybe the life that goes as we would like it to go. The first, and of course I love words, so I looked up what agape means, and it means a lot of things, but the first meaning was that I greet you with affection. And I'm going to say that to each of you tonight who's here because there's something that we have in common, and that is the search. So, and at the end of my story, my search ends with the acknowledgement of love, whether we like it or not, whether we want it or not. So I greet you with what we have in common, and that is the search for God, or meaning in our lives. So, as a child growing up with 10 kids in a not such a mansion, I learned that my love for my parents, and that the content of that love was that you just liked yourself or you believed in yourself, and that's what love did for you, and you could do anything that you set your mind to. So I didn't want to be a nurse. I checked the wrong box on a scholarship exam, and then I was afraid to tell my parents that I had checked this wrong box off. So off I was headed to nursing school. So I went to see my advisor because I went to City College first, and I said, hey, look what I did here. Pays for your books and a lot of other things. And she said, not to worry. She said, you only have to do this for a year, and then your scholarship transfers over. Oh, great. So now I don't have to tell my parents I made this mistake, and I really don't want to be a nurse. So meanwhile, I get taken to, my parents retire, and they literally pulled me to live with them in Florida. I was not a happy camper. And now I was at a university where there was, I was stuck. I was going to be a nurse. And my sophomore year, we had a hospital. I was throwing up. I was nervous. I'm surprised that I made it through my sophomore year. But anyway, so I get through 4 years of this, and by this time, sadly enough, my father had already died. He was dying, that's why we retired, and I don't mean to make light of that, but it was hard. So I was kind of on my own when I graduated from college, so I decided I was going to be a visiting nurse in South Miami. So I'm at another application, right? And there's a question on the bottom of the application, do you speak Spanish? I thought, I speak a little. So I wrote in un poco, figuring that it would help me get the job, right? And it did. So I walk in and they give you this nice uniform, so, very nice stripes. And in the day, I had to wear a little hat all over South Miami. And I pick up my case files, and they are Lopez, Catalina, Ramos, and I'm like, okay, this is South Miami. Nobody spoke English. Nobody spoke a word of English. In fact, I had a family who spoke only Italian. And I mean, this is not a friendly visit. This is like, how do you take your insulin? How do you take your pills? And I'm struggling through this, trying to find anybody in the neighborhood who could help me translate. But you see what I did? I was 21. I just felt I could do what I could do, and I had to do the best I could do. And then I meet Sylvia. So I go into Sylvia's house, and if you can imagine, all the people that I visited were poor. So we have these two sets of row homes, and they're only one story because this is Florida and there's hurricanes. And in between, there's grass. So I go into Sylvia's house, which is one of the more neatly kept houses, and she is a very big woman who is lying in this very small bed. And I said to her, Sylvia, I looked at her chart. What did I know, really? But I looked at her chart, and, I did know something. And I said, why are you in bed? And I said to her friends, in my halting Spanish, how long has she been in bed? And they said 9 months. And I said, 9 months? You're in bed, So I said, why? She had cancer. She was dying. There was no question in our mind she was dying. And she said, I'm in bed because this is my punishment from God. Well, I got to tell you, at this point in time, I knew who God was. I was really sure I knew who God was. And I said, God would not do that to you. And she said to me, Rosada, I'm divorced. She said, I had a boyfriend. I can still hear her say, novio. And she had this boyfriend for 9 years. This was a long time to be in a relationship. So God was punishing her. And I knew who God was, I got to tell you, from the tips of my soul, because I was loved and I was raised Catholic and I believed that God was merciful, kind, and good. And I said, no, Sylvia, if I get a priest to come in here and give you forgiveness, will you get up? And she says, see, I'll get up. So I get back in my car. That I got to tell you, I had this rat trap that just was an awful thing. So I get in my car, and no GPS, right? So I'm reading this map, and then I didn't need glasses, thank God, because the maps were really small they gave us from the visiting nurse service. So I go to the one parish, I knock on the door, and I said, hello, Father, I have a woman who needs confession. Sorry, I can't go. I go in this second parish. Now I'm about 8 miles away. And he says, no, I have Mass. So I go to the third parish, and the priest comes to the door, and I can tell he speaks Spanish, because I know he's Cuban. He has a Cuban accent. And I said, so what I did was I said, you have to listen to me, and I'll give you $50 if you do what I ask. And I thought, what am I doing? I don't have $50 in my pocket. But at this point, but you see what happened was, I wasn't going to fail, because I wasn't going to let God fail this woman, right? So I begged him. So I said, you get in my car, I'll drive you. It's like 10 miles. You go in there. What is it going to take you, 3 minutes? And, I'm from New York, so I'm going on and on and on. And I've since lost some of my New York accents, but I'm going, this poor man. He finally gave in, and he gets in my car, and he's like, gets in my car. And he goes over to Sylvia's, and he walks in. And he hadn't been in this part of town, because now I was 10 miles out, nearer to the beach. And he walks into this 2 rows, and his eyes get wider, and I sort of took his sleeve, and I said, come on, just going. So he goes back in the room, and he shut the door, and I had everybody leave, and he came out, and he's crying, and I'm like, no, not the time to cry, So that's another thing I was taught in my family. Crying wasn't a good idea, but anyway, he's crying, and I went into Sylvia, and I said, so Sylvia, what did he say? And he said, he told me to love, that in these days of my life, it was the most important thing I could do. And never mind never mind all the things I was thinking, that God loved me, and that in turn I should love other people. So I went out to him. I said, does that include her boyfriend? So I said, you need to go tell her that. So he goes back in, and I could hear him say, I could understand most of the Spanish. I don't want to make light of what I could understand. I could understand almost everything. It was just hard to communicate. And so I come back, so she gets on the phone, she calls the boyfriend, and blah, blah, blah. So I took him back, and I came back to her house, and I went over her bed, and the bed had to be this low, and I said, okay, Sylvia, arriba. And she looks at me with this utter fear in her heart. And I said, yeah, this is going to hurt. So I gave her the morphine that I could, and we got this, if any of you are nurses, there's this sort of hammock. You roll somebody in, and you lift them out, and you put them in a chair. And it was, I was so young, and I was so stupid. But she cried through this event. And to make a long story short, to push a little forward, 3 months later, Sylvia's still alive. She's got ramps. She was a hairdresser before she had gotten sick, before she stopped. And 3 months later, I come to this little alleyway, and she's out there snipping the kids' hair. And her boyfriend had built ramps into her house, and he had built a higher ramp for her to cook. So I had a roast beans and rice that day, and she was very, very kind to me. So anyway, I didn't think anything of it, but I didn't examine what I did or didn't see the meaning in what happened. It just was, and that was what I was supposed to do. And I didn't know I loved her. I have to be honest. I don't know whether I didn't think about it or love was reserved for this closeness or romance or whatever else you were doing. But about 3 months later, I knew it was time for me to stop seeing Sylvia. She didn't need me anymore, right? So I told her on a Tuesday, whatever day it was, I said, next Tuesday is my last day. So, we're all crying. She's crying. I'm not crying, of course. I'm just the way I was. And so I go to her house the next week, and on everything, lamp and ceiling and floor and table, is the Spanish word. And she said to me, she looked up at me, and she said, and I was much too small for this comment. She said, you gave me my life, and now I'm going to give you my language because you're terrible at it. But one of the things it took me time. I had to leave. Her case was closed, and I did go visit. But it was in the thinking about Sylvia years later with my second story that I thought how I loved this person. And I loved her because I was loved, and I wanted to extend that to her. And you know what? God was all right with the world, right? I got what I wanted. I didn't ask to make her live, right? I knew she was going to die, but she had a good death, and that's exactly what I wanted. So, the priest came, the priest forgave her. So all's right with the world, all's right with God, at least the God that I grew up with, right? So I moved back to New York, and I live in Manhattan. I have a very nice life. I have a nursing job, and finally I start working with children, so this is a very good thing. I don't have muck and guck that I really had trouble with, and I really admire people who can handle bed sores because it wasn't my thing. And I'm going to church on Sundays, and all my friends are making fun of me, and they were all going to this Pat Metheny as a jazz concert on Good Friday, and I said, no, sorry, don't go to music concerts on Good Friday, and they kind of laughed at me, and so I was good, it made sense. But I was working in pediatric oncology at the time, and I'm just going to tell you a short little bit of this story because it's pivotal in my life. My brother's child was admitted to my unit and suffered and died in my unit. But what happened the night before she died, her mother was 8 months pregnant, is they put her in my lap, and I had taken care of her. I had slept with her. I'd taken her home to my apartment, which was right across the street. She was only 10. And I had the nurses put her in my lap, and she looked up at me, and she says, Aunt Noreen, she said, please, I want to stay alive until the baby's born. And my first thought was, wait a minute, what do you mean you want to stay alive? You're not going to die. See, it was not the same with Sylvia, right? Now I was a little bit closer, right? You need to keep fighting, you need to keep fighting. And 15 minutes, and so in my mind, I had done what Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says everybody does, but you see, I had this image of God that listened to me, that made things work. And I said, okay, God, you let her live to my age now, and you take me. I didn't really think, I thought God would do it. But I thought the bargain, maybe the belief, the sort of, I believe in you, I believe in miracles, was enough. But about 15 minutes later, she died. And I think that all that love that was poured into me and used up just left. It just left. I could no longer live with what I believed was true, that God was good and kind and merciful, and it just didn't. And I say this in a very sort of, in a way that I don't know that I can tell you how angry I was, but how sad I was, and that God did not fit into that world. So I just decided that I was not going to pay attention to God anymore, I guess, since God didn't pay attention to me. So I lived for a couple of years. I had a lot of fun living in Manhattan, but there was something, and this is what I was telling the students, there was always something like pulling in me, like just pulling at me, a question. And so what I decided to do was intellectualize it and go to school for theology to try and understand what was pulling at me. And I don't know whether I wanted somebody to tell me that God was different, or that to help me explain this God that I could no longer explain. And I went to theology school, and really it just raised a lot more questions. But what happened was, I guess I let go of, I think what I know I did, and I should really go to my paper, I had a lot of answers and not enough questions. So I could tell you who God was when I was 21, and I could tell you who God wasn't when I was 20, when I was 30. And that was the problem. So I realized that what I saw in the world that wasn't controlled or could be controlled was the love that arose between two people. And I started thinking a lot about that. Like, how do you look at a person and know that you care? And how do you look at another person and know, wow, this person's mine? Like, this just makes sense. And in the pondering of that equation, that spontaneous something that arises up in us that we cannot control, I began to believe that we had to be made either in the likeness of God, imago Dei, or that God was in us, right? And I wasn't quite ready to forgive God, right? As easily as Sylvia felt forgiven, right? I think it's easier. But anyway, so what I did was go to theology school, and I'm just going to tell you one more little story that might make my journey make sense, and then I'm going to look at my paper and see how I'm going to close this. Was that my office was over in St. Rita's, and I was upstairs, and I was the only office upstairs, and the showers were, like, if I'm looking out of my office, the showers were, they were actually to my left. That they were on my left, and the women used to come out in their robes or towels and turbans. It was all women's dorm then. And one day, there was this man sort of lurking outside my office. I had a space outside my office, and he was kind of lurking. And so I got a little nervous, and I thought, I'm the protector. That's what I do. So I kept my door open, and I'm watching what he's doing and waiting for maybe one of the women to come out of the shower. And so finally, this woman comes out of the shower, and she's in a white robe and a turban. And so I got out of my office, and I stood at my office door like, okay, who are you? And she turned around. Sorry, I keep moving this. She turned around, and she caught a glimpse of him out of the side of her eye, and she dropped everything. She dropped her shower caddy. She dropped whatever she had in her other hand. And I saw his face. And it was something I can't describe, but I knew exactly what it was. She said to me, so she saw me standing there, and she must have known I was worried, and she said, "That's my dad. I haven't seen him in a year." So it turns out he came because she was in trouble, or was having some trouble, but he came from Singapore or Taiwan, I think it was Singapore, all the way. And what I saw happen between them, between the hug, it was something that is there, whether we like it or not. And it rises up in us. We can feel it. We can express it. We can know it. We can hope in it. And that is the love which resurrects whatever happens in between. It is the thing that makes me know that whoever this God is, there is God. So how did I resolve this image of God that I could live with? And all I can tell you is it's kind of metaphorical. in that if you've ever seen a picture of a supernova, all these tiny little lights sort of swirling around in the darkness, that somehow when each of us, and maybe comes to Earth, we get a piece of that. And it's in us. And so that's why, we have people we annoy us and all this, and people who we don't get along with, people who we once loved and don't love anymore, who we kind of hate, as the song said. But there is this thing in us that propels us to want to love, and that's what I could never deny, no matter what happened, that there was a God who created us, and a God somehow who lives with us, and I'm not quite sure how that is. Sometimes I envy people who are sure about how God is in their lives, or what that force is, and what it does on the earth, or what it propels you to. But that is the mystery. And I have to say, and I said this to Diego when we met, Karl Rahner is a theologian, and he has this quote, and maybe I'm misquoting him, but he said, God is a mystery, and the closer you get to the mystery, the closer you are to God. And he also says, and if heaven is knowing everything, please don't send me there. So in my humility, as a human being who does not understand, I will open myself up to the experiences that teach me about what that greater being is. So what do I hope for you? That you know that you're loved by someone, and that love is the ground for everything you do, and it is the way you get through the crisis in your life. And it is the way, and we're not going to get along with everybody, but it is the way you see people in your life. And I think that's how I ended up with the work I do, because I want to love the very people that we think we can't love. And those are the people who can't give us anything except whatever it is they have inside themselves. So how do I survive the questions? I've told you, and that was the nature of the topic of the talk, is surviving the questions and the human experience, finding God in the human experiences. But it's not only finding God, it's finding the absence of God, and that's sort of a cliche, but that's how I lived. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm not sure what happens next. Thank you.
We'd like to thank Noreen for speaking tonight. We're going to open the floor for for a couple questions, and I'll hand the mic over.
What if no one asks questions? Should I feel bad?
No, you're okay. Someone, questions?
Yeah, right. I'll just answer your question with a question.
Anyone? Questions? No one? Come on, Diego. You got a question?
What made you want to suddenly go work in, civil sanctuary? This before it became civil, right? Mm-hmm. So, as you said, you had these questions you were searching for, that you want to find some sort of solution to them, that only led to more questions. Why did you still want to have this question answered? Why didn't you just give up and just maybe just go on your life? Why did you concern yourself so much?
I have no clue. I honestly don't know why I concerned. Maybe it was the way I grew up. Maybe it was the people around me. Maybe it was people I met. Maybe it was seeing people who believed. I don't know. Why I came to campus ministry and why I chose a profession like that, there were a couple of reasons. I wanted to be with people who were searching, who were asking the questions, who were developing, and I felt that college was a really good place to do that. Plus, I wanted to go to graduate school, and I knew if I worked at college, I could go free. No, but I just wanted to be around people who were developing, and because I felt that I'll always be developing. Does that answer? It's a kind of a mystery, and I bet it had something to do with the people around me.
Anybody else?
So do you feel that there's an underlying circumstance as to how you ended up in nursing, or do you feel it really was just you happened to check the wrong box?
Oh, you mean, yeah. I don't know whether I guess I'm just going to tell you how I think. I think a lot of people say things happen for a reason. I think we make the reason things happen. I think we create meaning out of that. And as I said, I wanted to be a good person. Why I became a nurse? if I could tell you the fights I have with my parents trying to get out of it. I don't know. You know, I think if I thought that everything happened for a reason, I would say that I would never give up my experience as a nurse. First off, they were the most fun, finest, kindest people I've ever been around. But maybe I don't know why I sort of see that, but I think I made meaning out of it. Definitely. Yeah.
What's your advice for college students who are kind of struggling with their faith or like disillusioned with God and the church at this stage of their life?
I think for me it's separating God from the church sometimes, because some people are angry at the church and that's overlaid with God, and some people are angry at God and that overlays with the church, and I think sometimes you have to pull those apart. And I think you surround yourself with people who are okay with your questions. I'm serious, that like the struggle, that want to ask the questions, because that's what I found when I went to school for theology. It was like being around people who were just asking the questions and who were professing a belief in God but didn't know who the heck God was, and that was okay. So sometimes we come out of environments where, you know, like poor Sylvia, you know, she's confined to bed for 9 months because God's punishing her because, you know, she was divorced. So, yeah, I say surround yourself. You're here tonight, so you're kind of like if that's where you are at, or you have friends like that, this is what they should be doing. But they should feel free to challenge the rest of us. Like, you say this, but I don't believe it, and that's a good conversation. But I'd say stay in the struggle because, and for me, it's like, because I don't know where love comes from, but it is strong, it is powerful, it has dominion over us, you know, in a lot of ways. And I don't mean lust, I mean that love that, you know, you have for your parents and your siblings. You know, you'd do anything, and I don't know where that comes from. It doesn't come from anything, because you can't build that, right? It's just there.
Well, we want to thank Noreen again for coming and speaking. We would like to remind you all that our next, that's really loud, our next Agape Latte is October 25th. Same place, same time. We don't have a speaker shortly, soon. Be looking out for that. But yes, thank you for coming, guys.